Hello and welcome to the Basketball Beats programme on the new Sunset Radio here on MikeShaft.com. My name's Phil Sayer, and for the next hour and a half we'll be looking back at the 2012-13 season in British basketball. In the BBL, 3 of the 4 trophies went to the Leicester Riders, and we'll be hearing from head coach Rob Paternostro and general manager Russ Levinston later in the show. We'll also be paying tribute to one of the finest players in the BBL this past season, Damon Huffman of the Newcastle Eagles. But first, one of the biggest stories of the last season was the return of one of the greatest names in British basketball, the Manchester Giants. And the man responsible for the rebirth is Giants legend Jeff Jones. Mike Shaft spoke to Jeff and started off by asking him about his start in basketball back in the United States of America.
Seems like an awful long time ago now,
It
Mike,
was.
believe me.
It was.
It was. It feels like it anyway, almost another lifetime. I was actually an American football player, and some things happened, transpired, and I ended up playing basketball, I think rather late, in the sense from an American point of view, and was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to only an NAIA school, a small college, but a private school, and we did an awful lot. It was a good school. It did a lot of traveling. They went all over the country, out like South America, stuff like that. So I think I was fortunate that I fell in love with playing late in life, and an opportunity when I got done, relatively successful career collegiately, but an opportunity to come to Europe. Back then, it was like 1976. There wasn't an awful lot of what's going on now and stuff. So it was a unique opportunity, but more importantly, it was an opportunity to see a part of the world I hadn't seen. And
how did the opportunity arise?
A guy I played with had played in France the year before, and he was coming to Manchester on a Rotary scholarship, and a guy named John David Miller. Absolutely one of the best players I've ever played with. 6'5", could play any position. I'd just taken a job, and he just called me the week before the season was supposed to start. And, Brian called me and said that the second American wasn't coming, and would I be interested in coming? And I just said I'd start a job working in probation with juveniles and stuff. That's what my degree is in. And the opportunity to play and to see another part of the world was just a little bit too great. So 8 days later, I got off a plane, and here I am.
What kind of a game, you'll know what I mean by that question, did you find when you got over here?
To be honest, it isn't dissimilar. There were 2 Americans on every team. It was EBL 1 as it was then. It was probably only 5 years old maybe, but basketball had been around for a long time, mainly centered around the YMCAs in the country and places like that. It was good. The Americans tended to dominate in the sense of they were brought in to score and to do that, which wasn't a hardship for me because it was something I liked to do a little bit. We were fortunate. We had pretty good English guys that had played some international basketball. A guy named Steve Latham, Dick Powell, a guy named Kenny Walton, that all played at a pretty high level. Great Britain as far as when they were back qualifying for the Olympics, and in the England team. So we were good. Our first year we took everybody by surprise and ended up beating what was a perennial power from Crystal Palace. So we ended up coming second to them. So it was successful, and I kind of fell in love with it then and there, and I just thought it's a nice city. And I was coming back for a second year, and like I said, the second year things changed a little bit. Met Frida, and here I am.
Never went home.
No, I get home a lot, but I didn't go back home.
To stay.
No.
Now, over the years, Manchester basketball has been A, in the pits, B, in the clouds. I mean, we've gone from the top to the bottom to the top again and somewhere in between. How do you view it?
Exactly that. I think I've always done development, even from the first year. It would have driven me crazy just to be here to play basketball, maybe practice 2 or 3 nights a week, because everybody wasn't professional back then. So I've always worked in development. I've seen the best of times, believe me, when Manchester United owned us in the 80s, European competitions. It was some very, very high-level basketball. We did well in Europe. Kingston did well in Europe. So there was that, but then also I've been in the places where I've had to go and scrounge around to make sure people were getting fed. So it's been that way, and I think the key thing that I think is different now is the facilities are becoming much, much better, much more available for kids to play sport, not just basketball, and it's from an indoor perspective. And I think it may be on one of its little curves upwards at the moment, but I've been I could say the lowest of the low, and what I'd like to think was probably pretty much the highest of the highs. So it's been great, but it's been a roller coaster.
Eventually, the team went out of business, and again, depending on who you follow and how you follow it, etc., there are loads of different stories as to why. All I know is there came a point where there was no Manchester Giants or any Manchester team in the senior levels in this game. You then went on to great success with Manchester Magic out of the Amici Centre. What was it that was going on now that you felt this was the time to attempt to bring the Giants back?
Well, there's a lot of things, but I think the driving force, like I said, despite the accent, I probably feel I'm more Mancunian than most people in the sense of what I believe in and also a sporting culture. And to be fair, taking a little bit of a leaf out of the book of Ferguson in the sense of Manchester talent is good. And the Amici Centre, it was absolutely great product, did a great job at delivering to junior National League level, and tremendous success in the 90s. And it just turned, there were several things. The fact that some of those players were just finishing their universities, or some of them were already playing in Europe, in the States. A lot of them went on scholarships to the States and were coming back. And I just thought it was an absolute travesty that they weren't being able to play in their hometown. So that was one of the catalysts. The NBA, the USA game, the deal that the Manchester City Council did with the NBA was another one. And also hopefully the advent of facilities and medium-sized arenas to play in.
And we'll have more from Jeff Jones later in the programme. You're listening to Basketball Beats here on the new Sunset Radio. Now, on to our Spotlight feature, and the player in the spotlight in this programme was one of the stars of the BBL last season, Damon Huffman of the Newcastle Eagles. Damon was born in the USA and has been playing basketball around Europe for the past few years. It was here that Eagles head coach Fab Flournoy found him and brought him to the Eagles to be his backcourt general. Mike Shaft spoke to Damon Huffman Sr., Damon's father, who told him about Damon's start back in the day.
Well, he was the youngest. He was behind the two older boys and kind of got left behind, but we started him out with boxing gloves. I bought some boxing gloves. I wanted him to be, a fighter. You have to fight for what you want in this world. The world's not going to give it to you. You have to fight for it. So we started with that, and then he was the ball boy because I was one of the coaches. And he loved that, and then he eventually got better, but he was always small of stature all the way through, so he just kept getting beat up by the bigger boys. So that fighting attitude carried him a long way. He's got great mental ability. He is cerebral. He analyzes the game. He went to Brown University, and that's tougher to get into than Harvard. Harvard's one of the world premier colleges. He's going to Newcastle right now, working on his master's and playing basketball. So he's very, very, very bright and very talented. He gets better with every game. He'll be disappointed after this game because this was not a good game for him. And
how did he get to end up in Newcastle in the British game?
He started in Europe in the Belgium League, played a couple years there. Then he went to the Netherlands and he played there. And then, obviously, they played against Newcastle in that tournament, and my son was the MVP of that tournament, so he had good games there, and they really liked him, and that's how he ended up in Newcastle.
Has he taken a decision how long he wants to stay here?
I asked him that, and he's going to get his degree. He's going to have a master's in urban planning. He wants to make the world a better place. Can you imagine that? Is that possible? Is that possible to make this world a better place? But anyway, that's what he wants to do. And if anybody can do it, he can do it. He's very bright, very social. He's got good skills, social skills. He's very intelligent, politically correct, not like his father.
So what brings you over here besides seeing your son play?
Well, I actually have two sons to play. And I would like to talk to all the parents of wannabes. A wannabe is somebody that wants to be good.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that don't care, but there are some wannabes out there. And if you want to have a professional athlete in your family, I have two. I'm a little white boy. I'm not very big. My sons aren't very big, but they're extremely skilled. They're extremely dedicated. They're focused. They're disciplined. If you want to have a world-class athlete, you have to do world-class things. You have to have a world-class coach. You as parents have to be world-class. You have to go that extra mile. You have to feed them a world-class diet. You can't let them eat junk food. Hello, junk ends up being junk. junk in the trunk. Ever hear that? Yeah. When I had my boys going through, I hired a sports psychologist. Imagine that. Oh. I hired a strength and conditioning coach. I hired a skill coach.
Just for your two guys?
Just my guys.
Wow.
Just my guys. I travel all over looking for games. Now, I'm going to tell you this is not politically correct. White guys play like dogs. Black guys play like cats. So I wanted my kids to learn how to play like cats. So we went down to Flint, Michigan, which is darker, and we played at Mott Community College, and the coach loved us there because he was really trying to recruit both my sons. And he would get us into the games, and that's how they really learned how to play both sides of the game. So,
what do you make of the league that you've seen over here?
They're extremely talented. They're real beefy. I'm telling you, the big guys don't look that big, but they are monsters. You go down and stand by them by the floor.
Stand by Charles Smith. I know what you're talking about.
He's big fellow.
Yeah.
They're put together. They're athletic. I think they're like a half a notch below the NBA, best basketball league in the world. So both teams are quality squads. I think the Sharks will have a hard time eating the Eagles the next time they play because.
How long are you over here for?
Through Wednesday, and then I'm going to go watch my other son play in Antibes. He actually plays on the Sharks, the Antibes Sharks. So I'm jumping ship from an eagle to a shark. A shark, yeah.
Well, I don't know if you're going to come back for the playoffs, but that's when it gets really serious between these two teams. They pretend they like each other, but they don't.
Yeah,
They don't. Way down deep, they don't. And when it comes to playoff basketball, it gets intense.
Put their war paint on.
It's business. Listen, can I thank you very much indeed for taking time to speak to us. It's absolutely brilliant to have you. Thank you. Thank you very much
indeed. You have
indeed.
a great atmosphere, great chemistry, great,
We enjoy
the
it.
players love it. If no fans showed up, what kind of a game would that be? You know what I mean?
Well, when you go back to the States, just remember mikeshaft.com/sunset. That's where we broadcast. The players' parents listening back in the States. It's really good. All the very best. Thank you.
Damon Huffman Sr. talking about his son. And we'll have more later as we continue to pay tribute to Damon Huffman, who played last season for the Newcastle Eagles. Without doubt, the BBL team of the season was the Leicester Riders. They won 3 of the 4 available trophies in the BBL, missing out on the clean sweep by failing to beat the Sheffield Sharks in the BBL trophy. More on that later. The head coach of the Riders is Rob Paternostro. Mike Shaft travelled to Leicester to speak to the man himself.
Delighted to say that I'm with head coach of the Leicester Riders, Rob Paternostro. Rob, it's been one heck of a season for you.
It certainly has, and it's been nice since the season has finished to actually be able to sit back and reflect because, during the season, we really didn't have much time. Whatever success we had, there was always something coming our way. So this last couple weeks here have been a great time to reflect with a great group of guys and a tremendous season.
When did you realize that you had something special going on?
Well, I think the first day we got together, I thought, we looked at the group that we had, and we just felt like we were very athletic and very deep. And we thought that if we were able to improve as the season went on, we would be a very difficult team to play. But, I realized it after a couple months when we had guys on our team that some games didn't play 35 minutes, some games didn't take 15, 20 shots, and didn't say anything, and never complained about coming out of the game, never complained about their role. And it was a group that cared about one thing, and one thing was winning. And that, for me, was what made us special. You can have as much talent, you can have as much depth, but when you have a group that is focused on winning and not concerned about the individual part of the game, then you have a chance to be special.
You took on Newcastle and beat them. That simple. How did that feel for you? Because they've been dominant.
Well, yeah. I mean, being around this league for a long time, you have to admire what they have done. It's been incredible, really. I think, the first game we went up there this season, it was first game on television, and we had just lost John Fraley, so we were going up there, with a shorter bench and a team that people probably thought couldn't win. But that game, that first game that we beat them up there, and the way we did with our defense was a great feeling for us. And I think it gave us the confidence that we needed the rest of the season. But every game against them is not only challenging during the game, but the week leading up, you really have to prepare for them, and that's another thing with our guys was they were focused and they did their homework, and we were able to go out in the court and get the results.
You had some great endings to games over the season, but the Manchester one must have been just awesome.
Well, we had played the night before, and it was a back-to-back, one of our maybe 11 or so back-to-backs that we had. And we had injuries, Zaire Taylor, Pavel Lashansky, Jorge Calvo. They weren't able to play going into that game, and we were down in the first half. But I remember going into halftime and telling the guys to just, let it rip in the second half. Let's go for it. And that was special because we were able to get in position to win that game and then dramatically win it, which was great with the Cousinard threes. But it goes to show you that when you have a really good team, you can win in many different ways, and that was another one for us.
Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of difficult questions here now, so be prepared. How could you not win all 4 trophies?
Well, I mean, we were able to get to that final against Sheffield, and I think when we played Worcester in the two-legged games, the back-to-back two-legged games, Friday, Saturday, those were tough games. Those are maybe the 2 toughest games we had all season, and we were beat up going into that game. And we weren't able to really practice, and I think that affected, especially early on in that Sheffield game. Now that's from our angle. The other angle is I thought they played very well. I thought I think anybody when looking at that team, they finished 7th, which goes to show you how good the league was this year. They're talented. They had a lot of talented players, and I thought that they shot the ball really well, especially early, which got them going. But when you look back at the game, we had the ball with a minute to go. We had a couple opportunities with the tie game, and we didn't come through. They got to the foul line at the end, which for me was a tough one. It still is a tough one to swallow, but we were in position. And I think when you get to finals, no matter who you're playing against, you want to be in position to win the game, and we were, and we didn't. And I think that's what we all love about sports, whether you're competing in it or whether you're watching it as a fan, is that you have to play the game on the day, and give them credit. They did that, and it was a dramatic ending, and we weren't able to pull it out. But the good thing, though, Mike, was that we got to play the next Wednesday there.
Against the same team.
Against the same team, and,
You whooped them.
Well, it wasn't just that, but we had smart guys that were able to look at what happened in that game before, and we looked at it and we said, well, we can do this better now. We can do this better now. And I think that propelled us for the rest of the season to go in there on that Wednesday night, correct the things that we needed to correct, and the rest is history.
Well, I thought the trophy final was awesome, and the ending for television was just sensational. I think if you ask most of the people who follow the BBL and follow different teams, they will say that their second team is Leicester Riders and they love Rob Paternostro. There is one criticism that I want to raise with you, and that is language. You sometimes get a little bit excited and use different language. Do you accept the criticism, and are you going to stop doing it? Because we want to be a family sport.
Well, I guess you were right about the tough questions. I didn't expect that one. That's something that is certainly all professional sportsmen and people in the public sometimes don't realize that it's not just the players out on the court and the people you're working with. There are other people around, and we get so focused sometimes we don't do that. Growing up for me, where I'm from, it's certainly colorful language, and it's never something to demean anyone. It's just part of the vernacular that I do try my best to eliminate. It's funny because, around the house, and I I don't use those words, a basketball thing. I think I get so fired up. But yes, the answer is always trying to get better with that. And I'll make sure next year when I see you at a game that we talked before, and you make sure actually that you remind me about that.
Rob, I got one more question for you. How does the future look for you and for the Riders?
We're excited about off the court. I think we've made such an impact in Leicester, in Leicestershire. I think around the country. I think now a lot of people that follow basketball, identify us as a club that's doing great work both on and off the floor. For us, it's always been the same way. We're not blessed at this time with the biggest budget, so we have to be intelligent on what we do, and we have to understand that we're not shooting for 1 year of glory. We're trying to sustain what we have, and the decisions that we make are for the long term. Even this season here, we didn't go out and overspend anything. We were in the budget that we had, and that's what we'll continue to do. But we hope that it increases every year. And when you look at the attendances that we had this season and with the media coverage, and you just have to do the test of walking around the area. People are excited about the Riders. And I think from 5 years ago when I came in here, it's dramatic what we've been able to do both on and off the floor. And with the interest of the people in the community, they're really embracing us. I think it's only exciting times ahead.
BBL Coach of the Year for 2013, Leicester Riders' Rob Paternostro. If I was to mention the name Masai Ujiri, I would think that few people listening to this programme would know who I was talking about. Well, Masai Ujiri is the NBA's Executive of the Year for 2013. Unfortunately, in the BBL, we don't have an Executive of the Year. However, we think it's safe to say that were there such an award, that too would have gone to the Leicester Riders in the shape of Russ Levingston. While he was in Leicester, Mike Shaft took the opportunity to speak to the man who's doing such good work behind the scenes for the Triple Trophy winners.
Well, I'm here at the Leicester Riders offices in the centre of Leicester, and with me is Russ Levingston. Now tell me, Russ, what is your official title?
I'm general manager, but I'm also a director of the club and also one of the owners as well.
Can I say congratulations on the season that you've had, first of all? Tell me how it's been for you.
It's been phenomenal. I suppose words and everything else couldn't imagine actually what we went through this year and all the hard work that's gone into obviously getting us to where we're here. And it's been a great season, both on the floor with all the success with the professional club, but also off the floor with all of our community work. And we've been getting many awards for that side as well as on the floor.
How big a task did you find when you came here? Because you used to be at Milton Keynes.
Yeah, initially I never really knew what I was getting into, to be honest. And I think a lot of people don't when they first get into to basketball as your life. Obviously that started for me back in the Hemel Royals days, then moved on obviously on to Milton Keynes, and then when I took over here 6 years ago now, one thing that was great was there was a lot of support and people that wanted to help drive it in the right direction, and a great fan base that was here. But there was also a lot of firefighting, especially in that first 6 months to a year that we had to deal with the previous regime and how they run the club and the organisation, both in the community, commercially, and also on the floor. So there was a big culture change that we had to create, and it took us about 2 years to do that.
Will the situation you've got here become something you could roll out to other clubs in the BBL?
Yeah, I think so. We've used some of what Newcastle have done in regards to their model, and I think other clubs are slowly working, and we're supporting, especially the other BBL clubs. We share a lot of information. There's a lot of BBL clubs now work together, support each other, and slowly you're starting to see other clubs doing similar activities to build the infrastructure you need so that the performance on the floor can come.
When did you personally realise what you'd built here, especially in the professional team leading to what's happened this season?
I still don't think it's perfect. I think there's still a long way we can go. And yes, the success on the court was great last year, but there's even more exciting things happening as well for us in regards to the new arena, the development off the court in our player pathway at Loughborough University and Loughborough College and Charnwood College. It's really exciting times around, and I sort of sat down with all the staff at the end of the season, and it was a great year, and no one can ever take that away from us. But the hard work starts again because we've got to start moving things forward. There's lots of really exciting developments happening with new branding, new website, new marketing, ready for when we're ready moving into that new arena as well. So it's really exciting times. For me, especially in the last few weeks, I've really sat down and taken in the season a little bit more so, because I think sometimes you're so in the motion of working 7 days a week and 12, 18 hours a day that you forget actually the success that we have had. And looking back, and I had the opportunity to actually watch all 3 finals that we were in, and watching the game as well when we won the league as well. So that really did help sink everything in this success and actually what we have achieved and how great that is. And it's been a long time coming for a lot of the fans. Many of the fans have been fans for 25 years in this club, and I think that's one of the nicest things that we've been able to do is give them success, and they've been through the club thick and thin, and it's great that they're getting that benefit of success.
What's the time frame on the venue?
Well, the venue is, we're hoping that we're at the moment going for planning, and we're hoping that we'll be in a position that will be ready by the end of March, beginning of April.
A couple of difficult questions I always like to ask them. How could you not do the clean sweep this year? Come on, you were odds on to win that trophy final. Let's get it right.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think if we wouldn't have won that trophy final, who's to say whether we would have won the league or won the playoffs? That was a big learning experience for us, the club, to lose that final, to be honest. Big learning experience for the players, the coaching staff and the management to ensure it never happens again. So that's one of the things that we put in place from that day that happened, and some things are just meant to happen.
Well, I'll say this. At that game, the Sharks had the eye of the tiger, as it says. 3 days later, you came to Sheffield and you were the ones who had that look in your eyes.
Yeah, and I think it's very difficult to keep beating a team as well. You play a team, I think we played Sharks 4 or 5 times leading up to that game, and I think most of the games we've beaten them by 15 or more points as well. So it's really tough to keep doing that. And when it comes to a final, previous form and where you're at and everything else goes out the window. Anything can happen on that day. And I think that's what's also great about the sport of basketball is on their day, any team could beat anyone.
One of the things that fans and more fans are getting mad about is this aggregate games, these 2 games. When are you guys, and you're on the board, so I could have a go at you, when are you guys going to put an end to this?
I think everybody would like different structure of the league, and I think an ideal situation is that we go to a 3-game, 5-game series. That's what I'd like to see as well. The biggest problem we have is facilities. Availability, facilities, also if you're pre-booking and then you don't take that booking up, the cost and all them other implications. And until I think we get into a stage where every single club owns or runs their facility or has that flexibility, that's what needs to happen for that to work. But I think we're getting there. Slowly we're getting there. There's big debates in the next couple of board meetings about the structures for next year, and it'll be interesting to see how it looks.
Final question. How does the future, the short term, look for the Riders, and what can we expect from you in the coming season?
It's exciting. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's been an interesting time since the end of the season of looking at the structure of us as a club, but also recruitment of players, dealing with agents, dealing with players. We got some exciting news to come tomorrow, and there'll be some more exciting news throughout the summer for players re-signing.
Well, hang on a minute. You got to tell me what the exciting news is tomorrow. This isn't going out for another week.
Well, tomorrow we'll be announcing Drew Sullivan, GB captain, back to Leicester.
Well, that's great news. I have to say, I think he's been one of the differences. He's not the only one, but I remember when you signed him that first season, I happened to be in a hotel. He was on GB duty, and we had breakfast together. And, I said to him, he makes the difference wherever he goes. And you've just got to look at the row of trophies he's won, Newcastle, Mersey here. He makes the difference, and I'm really delighted that he's found a spot where he's enjoying his basketball and getting success as well. I want to congratulate you on what you've built here, because I tell you this, before you came here, it was lean times in Leicester, no doubt in my mind. And I watch all of this all the time, 24/7. And you've made a huge difference, you personally, and of course having Rob alongside you as well, meaning that the success came on the floor as well. Congratulations on all of that, and here's to next season.
I appreciate it, and thank you very much for your support, Mike. Thank you.
Russ Levinston, General Manager of the Leicester Riders. You're listening to Basketball Beats here on the new Sunset Radio. Today, we're paying tribute to Damon Huffman of the Newcastle Eagles. We've already heard from his father, who also has the same name. Now it's time to hear from the son himself as we continue to put Damon Huffman Jr. in the spotlight.
Well, with me now is the other Damon Huffman. We've already spoken to your dad, and he told me a little bit about you. How do you see it when you were growing up? Because he says you used to be in boxing, first of all.
Boxing? No, that was more of a family tradition. You know, we got all three boys down in the basement, put the gloves on, and release some tension, so to speak.
How did you get into basketball?
It's been in the family. You know, my dad played, my uncles played, my brothers played, and you know that's kind of just what you do growing up. You do what your brothers do, and kind of took it from there.
And how did you see your journey to playing in the British League?
You know, it's kind of been unexpected. If you would have asked me 10 years ago would I be playing in Britain, I would have said I had no idea. But that's kind of the cool thing about basketball, is it can take you places you never expected. I went from university to Belgium to Holland to Britain, and you know now I'm still loving it. So basketball has been good to me.
Is this your first or second season?
This is my first season with the Eagles.
Right. And what do you make of the team and the setup up there?
Oh, I think we're doing great. Obviously, this season, you know, we haven't won the trophies or the cups that we wanted to, you know, but we got a good group of guys. We got guys that know how to win, know how to play. We just got to stay healthy and get on the same page for the playoffs.
Yeah, you've had some injury troubles up there, haven't you?
Yeah, you know, we got some older guys and we got some more experience, and you know, we're not the deepest team, so when someone goes down, it's a vital part. We didn't really respond the way that we should have, but now we're in a situation where everyone's starting to get back to form, ready for playoffs.
I don't want to dwell on it, but what did you make of tonight's game?
Tonight's game was an interesting one. You know, the small gym, the atmosphere, Sheffield playing them back-to-back, basically, 2 road games in a row. It was an interesting
You got another back-to-back to come.
Yeah, hopefully one will be home and away, and you know, I think this was kind of just a feeler game, kind of feel what they're going to do, how they're going to respond. So now we know that they're going to try to fight back, and we got to be ready for the playoffs.
You got one more chance to win a trophy this year, but you've got to go all the way to the end of the season.
To me, that's what basketball is all about. You know, because growing up in America, you always win the championship at the end of the season. So the playoffs are always the most important. For me, being over here in Britain, you know, they have the football influence of the championship and the cup and things like that, which I know are important because I've been playing for a while. But for basketball, the playoffs are the big thing. So I think we're getting ready and we're gearing up for that.
And finally, what do you make of our league over here, and do you want to come back next year or what?
You know, I think the BBL is underrated. There's some talented guys. There's some guys that played at high levels. They just don't get necessarily the credit that they deserve. And part of that's because there's some teams at the very bottom that are really, really struggling, and that can kind of drag a league down when other teams see that or other leagues see that. But I think the quality is going in the right direction. And obviously I came here this year, so I would definitely like to come back. But you know, you got to take it one step at a time, and you can't focus too far ahead because you got to win these games coming up.
Well, Damon, can I thank you very much indeed for taking time to be with us. It's good to have you in the league over here. I hope you're back again for next season. I know that you guys have had a tough time. No trophies, that's unheard of in recent years for the Eagles, but there's still one up there to go for.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks very much indeed.
Damon Huffman of the Newcastle Eagles, and we'll be hearing from head coach Fab Flournoy talking about the attributes that Huffman has and what he brings to the Eagles team. Now, earlier in the programme, we heard from Manchester Giants head coach and the man who relaunched the Giants this season, Jeff Jones. As Mike Shaft continued their conversation, they were joined by Giants director Giulio Minozzi. Mike began this segment by asking Giulio about his involvement with the Giants.
Well, I got involved with Manchester Giants about 9-10 months ago. And basically I sent an email to Jeff. We met for a coffee, and the rest is history.
And what do you do?
I'm in charge now of all the ticket sales and profiling who we got inside the hall at all the time and make sure we maximize our ticket sales.
Jeff, what did you make of the present season?
A lot of people will say, talent-wise, we should have maybe done a little bit better. And I probably would agree with it being a competitive person. But I think a testament to not only Julio's, but the other people behind the scenes work. The last 3 or 4 games, this is a 9th, 8th place team in a league that really, again, all British 9 of them Mancunians, all that sort of stuff. But we basically, I can't actually say the actual number that showed up at Wright Robinson because the fire officer and some other people might be annoyed, but we actually turned people away. And from my point of view, that was great. I mean, the fans have been absolutely phenomenal. Great at the beginning, a little bit of a lull because of fixture stuff, but every aspect has been a success because we've done what we needed to do. We've established ourselves. We brought back a lot of Manchester talent. The guys off the floor, Julio and those other guys, have done a great job in getting us a brand awareness. And I think it's a testament to all the hard work off the floor. And really, people have invested, but it's been pretty much a volunteer effort from off the floor. I think those things are starting to change now. And I think it was let's take a look and see what these guys are all about, and are they going to fall flat in their face? And hopefully, touch wood, we haven't, and we'll go from strength to strength.
Well, having been involved in every which way or loose with British basketball, I think what you've achieved in the past season was quite amazing. And I say this to both of you and the other people involved in the management of the team. Because to go from nothing, which is where we were 2 seasons ago, there was no Manchester club, to coming to within, and I only found out the exact point today, coming to within 0.3 of a second of making the playoffs, that is just amazing. Talk me through that game, the last couple of minutes of that game against London Lions, which was winner takes all.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing was the absolutely atmosphere in the place was fantastic. We'd opened up the balconies all the way up. Wright Robinson's a great facility, by the way, in the sense of where we are at the moment. But we opened that up. Great crowd. Great. We didn't get off to a great start. Nerves, whatever. But the last 5 minutes, and what pleased me the most, it was pretty much hardcore Manchester kids that were on the floor, and we were down whatever, and Stephen Gill scored a basket to take the lead. I think we did a pretty good job in doing what we had to do, and as is in sport, a guy, it was his time, it was his moment. He's a veteran player, did a great job, and he threw a shot up and it went in. So from my aspect, it was heartbreak. Not necessarily for me or even these guys, but the players who had sacrificed a lot this year. They knew it wasn't going to be easy. They also knew that everything wasn't going to be in place. But as we said, the strides off the floor have been great, and I think it is only on and upwards from now on. But great atmosphere.
The first time I worked with Julio, by the way, was a game that we did at Chester when I was broadcasting one of the games on MikeShaft.com on the new Sunset Radio. I realized that I know the answer to this next question, which is the game at Chester. But I want to know, what were your highlights of the season?
To me, the highlights of the season is the 5 minutes after the last game.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because the fans has taken in what we had done. We lost 0.3 seconds. Everybody went, whoa. And all of a sudden, 30 seconds after, the people were standing, clapping, the players on the floor. And it's something that, thinking about it gets goosebumps to me. We were there, I remember, 9 months ago in Bury, in a pub, and we decided to go for the BBL for this season. And 8 months down the line, we got 6-7 matches, full houses. The people in town talking about Manchester Giant in a positive way. Kids tell me, oh, it's fantastic. I've never seen something like this. I want to be one of them. And that's the difference.
Jeff, what's your highlight of the season?
I got to admit, I think it is seeing kids that I probably obviously my own, but the other kids I started playing, Stefan was 12, I think, and he's approaching 30. And the pride that he had, that he just showed and exuded, like in being able to play in Manchester for a team in the professional game. I think that was one of the highlights, and I just think it belongs. I just think it just made me feel really good that it was back. And I alluded to Brian, who brought me over, and this guy gave 50 years of his life to basketball and stuff, and it was a shame that there wasn't that kind of, and he was a Giants guy through and through, although he did basketball and stuff. So from my point of view, the same thing, but the main thing that I think the difference is, my guys lost, but they stayed out there for 30 minutes talking to fans and it's the caliber of the people that I have playing for me this year, that no matter what, they realize that it's a mission almost. It's a journey. And winning and losing, absolutely, dead important across the board. But more importantly, that you actually leave a lasting effect on somebody. I mean, I've had I've had people come up to me in the last 3 or 4 months that, do you remember you coached me and such, and and all that sort of stuff. But it's great you got the Giants back. To me, that's enough. That is enough. Now, obviously, in a year or two, I'll be wanting to win some trophies. But right now, that's it, really.
How about low points besides the not making the playoffs? And I don't know how low you felt that was. I didn't think that was low at all, in my personal opinion. But my opinion doesn't count. Low light for you?
I think that we created opportunities for some of Manchester kids to come, and it didn't work out. Now, in an example from a Nick George perspective, Nick George. High level player, absolutely. 31 years old. It was probably too soon. But I took a shot. I took a gamble. Raises our quality, raises our level tremendously. But this is a guy that's used to making pretty good money, kind of being semi-pampered like footballers are to an extent. And we just weren't geared up for that. And then he had other things that going on. And it's those type of things. And I never decry a player wanting to move on and wanting to get better. But I think I tried to be too nice to everybody and try and accommodate everybody. And in reality, that's probably, it's a disappointment, but it's also a learning curve for us. And at some stage, that caliber player will be able to play here. We'll have everything right. So I think that's not being able to embrace all the kids and finding a way of making them satisfied with the opportunities that were being presented with themselves.
Julia, low point of the season.
Low points of the season, from my point of view, it always been November when we had a low attendance. And we used to go on a Monday night to these meetings, and everybody was pointing at me. Why there is not enough people in the hall? And then it been a low highlight for me. But on the other hand, I learned a lot there, because we came away from the usual press releases and tried to sell tickets, and we embark on a media overall, where we embrace Twitter and Facebook, and we start producing our own highlights of the games. And all of a sudden, this bubble just went, and it multiplied, and it was like the place to be. We had several so-called bloggers, they are so famous nowadays, asking me to come and watch a game, and then blog and put videos on YouTube and things like that. And all of a sudden, it became something. But I tell you, November wasn't funny.
Head coach Jeff Jones and Giants director Giulio Minozzi. And we'll hear a final instalment from Jeff Jones later in the programme. 3 of the 4 trophies this season were won by the Leicester Riders. The 4th competition, the BBL Trophy, however, was not won by the Riders. In the final, which took place at the fabulous Commonwealth Games Arena in Glasgow, they would come up against the Sheffield Sharks. Very few people in basketball predicted anything but a massive Riders win, but the Sharks would prove them all wrong. Mike Shaft spoke to Sharks chairman Sarah Backovic, and he started off by asking her about her thoughts on the last season.
Do you know what? When we went into the season, we were coming out of a very difficult previous season, and there was a little bit of hangover from that. And I think recruitment-wise, we probably didn't do our best, and that simply because we had many distractions through the summer. So the start of it's certainly been a season of 2 halves, and the first half of it was a struggle, and that's obviously reflected in the losses that we sustained. But we made a couple of changes that we thought were appropriate when we'd got on our feet somewhat, and the second half of the season was fabulous, fantastic. We recomposed ourselves as a club and as a team, and found that enthusiasm and vigour that's always been through the Sharks' veins.
You managed to stop Leicester Riders winning all 4 trophies by winning the BBL trophy. Tell me what that was like for you.
It was incredible. It was obviously I've done this job an extremely long time, and I've been in many finals, but it was the most satisfying cup final ever, because I think we just went into it with such adversity on our side, and
low expectations.
Realistically, realistically, they had beaten us, several times significantly. So, we knew that we were up against it. We were a man down with Micah being out with his foot injury that he'd got the week before and had been operated on, so there was no chance of him being available. And, of course, en route to Glasgow, we then had Nick Lewis come down with a stomach virus, which we then ended up having to isolate him in the hotel, so we didn't want that spreading around. And we just felt that we had got everything against us, but I think that gave us the impetus to to just go out there and give it everything we'd got, and everybody felt the same way. Everybody wanted to do it for each other, and I said to Atiba, we've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, so let's just go out there and scrap it out.
I'll tell you a very interesting answer I got from Rob Paternostro when I put a question to him. He said that had they not lost that final, he's not sure they would have won the 2 following trophies, because he said that really was a wake-up call for them.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was a bit of a shock to them, because they must have expected that, it wasn't going to be too difficult a day for them. And if I was in their shoes, I probably wouldn't have thought any differently. So you always try as sports people to balance that train of thought, but it's difficult when you've got a talented team that have got such a strong record as Leicester had going into that final. It must have been very difficult not to think this, we've beaten this team significantly, they're weaker. Everything pointed in Leicester's favour, and I don't think there was a person in the house that really thought that the Sharks could do it, other than the Sharks, themselves, who felt, there's a chance we could.
Where do you think we are as a league now?
You know what? I think we're in the ascendancy as a league. In my experience, sport is cyclical. You have ups and downs in every sport. Favourable financial years and unfavourable ones, and that has there's all sorts of anomalies that can impact on a sporting club. But I think basketball in itself within this country, participation-wise, is at its highest. It's competing now. It's the third most played team sport, second only to football and cricket. So, I think that's a fact that a lot of people aren't aware of out there, that participationally basketball is very high on the agenda. As a league, I think everybody who's been involved in the BBL over the last 5 to 7 years has really felt the difficulties. It's really hit us hard. But in doing so, we've galvanised and pulled together, understood ourselves, our product better, understood better how to package it and take it forward, and really sort of rewritten the blueprint, and we've done it collectively. So I think as a league, we're on the ascendancy, we're going in all the right places. The right structure is coming to pass within BBL in terms of organisation, who's running what. So I think, things are looking very positive, and we're working towards good things.
I've been asking everybody I've interviewed a couple of difficult questions, so here he is. First of all, is the league going to do something about this aggregate score? I call it nonsense. When what should happen should be 1 game or 3 games.
I don't believe that decision's been taken as yet. Oh, now we've got your time is a little bit out because we've got a board meeting next week, so I'm sure that will be on the agenda. And I think different people around the table probably have slightly differing views. My guess is the majority probably do feel that the aggregate score isn't as exciting as a 3-game draw would be. So I don't know, we'll have to see. But
the point is, take the Sharks even in the first round. If you lose the first leg badly, then you have no way of getting back. Where if you were both starting at 0-0 in the second leg, there's every chance you could win the second leg, which would be at home for you. And then along comes the third game, which everybody would have their eye on because that was a decider.
Well, you say that, Mike, but we've personally experienced games where we've gone into a second leg 20 points down against Newcastle, not just this season gone by, but in previous seasons where we've been 20 points down going into a second leg and beaten them. And that in itself can be very exciting, because teams will come into it with the mentality of they're written off, they're done, you're not going to come back 20 points. And you can do that. So I think there's an argument to suggest that that's still as exciting in one aspect. But my personal view is that the 3-game draw would be more exciting, and it would give the playoffs the gravitas that it deserves.
Are we ever going to go back to a championship weekend?
I honestly don't know. I think possibly. I mean, probably, because I think the only reason that we stepped away from that were financial reasons. And being able to get into venues for a whole weekend was, significant.
But you sold out 9,000 seats or something at Wembley this year for the Sunday. If you could add another 5,000 or 6,000 to that on the Saturday, you've got your weekend.
Yeah, totally, I agree. Yeah, and that's possibly the way it's going to go, and I think that decision probably lies with the chief who does the work, and in Andy Webb, and he's done an incredible job. And I've always had a lot of admiration for Andy when the structure changed at BBL and it was like, who's going to step in out of all the people that were there at the time. Andy was just the most solid person, and has done an incredible job, because it is no walk in the park dealing with 12, 13, 14 clubs simultaneously trying to keep everybody on the ropes.
Is there any announcement as yet as to who's coming in next year, or where we are with number of teams, or who's going out?
I think there's sort of a fairly obvious departure from the league, unfortunately. I think Mersey gave it everything they had got in terms of their limited expertise that they had. They had a lot of desire, but unfortunately not the support that they deserved. They came out. It was a very difficult year for them, but I think it's unlikely that we'll see Mersey in the forthcoming year. Obviously, everybody knows that Birmingham's coming in. Above that, unable to tell you, I'm afraid. I'm not on the franchise committee.
Well, we'll wait and see. The news will no doubt break very soon indeed. Final question. One of the big things now is whether you can bring back all the players that you want to bring back, because that's the important thing. So where are the Sharks now with recruitment? Because I think you ended the season with a great bunch of guys, and winning the trophy proved that that was the case. How many do you want to bring back? Can you bring them all back that you want to?
Yeah, I think we can. I think we can bring all those we want to bring back. And obviously it's always been important to us to be able to secure our British players, first and foremost, and our young players. And there's almost a bit of a Busby Babe feel about the Sharks at the moment, where we're looking at a lot of young guys that can give us longevity, that can be around and really sustain winning culture within the Sharks again moving forward. So those guys are actually more important to us, I think, than the veterans right now. So, but it is important for us to secure the British guys, and I think we've done that. And in terms of the foreign players, I mean, that's in Tiba's hands.
Chairman of the Sheffield Sharks, Sarah Backovic. You're listening to Basketball Beats on the new Sunset Radio. Now let's leave the BBL and hear from the Director of Basketball at Leeds Carnegie, Matt Newby. The Division 1 men's team had a great season, winning one trophy with a sensational performance in the National Cup final, where they defeated the Bristol Flyers. Matt was philosophical about the last season.
I mean, the form book says it. We've had a number of highs and lows. We've had times where we've been outstanding and I think proved that we were certainly one of the most competitive teams in the country. And towards the end of the season, we seemed to maybe run out a little gas, and maybe that's a reflection of the frequency of games and the multiple competitions that we're in, and maybe just where we're at in life in terms of players and personnel. But it was exciting, and I've got a lot of fond memories from the year.
Okay, let's start off with one of those fond memories, winning the Cup at Sheffield. I was there broadcasting the game on MikeShaft.com, and I have to say that ending was just one of the most incredible I'd seen. In the commentary, I said, with however long it was to go, I think that you were down 12, that you couldn't afford to trade baskets. You were so far behind. You had to stop Bristol scoring. And I don't think they scored another point after that. How do you remember that day?
We were very proud of the achievement to get to the final, and I think we felt confident about competing. Andreas and his team are one of the best in the country. They have been for 3 or 4 years now, and they're consistently well organised, always have marquee performers. But we felt that we could be in it, and I think that was reflected in the first half, and we really established the tempo in the second quarter, I think. And then in terms of the third, we just seemed to lose it, and there was this big bridge built. We couldn't get a call going to the basket. Whether or not they were great decisions or not, there was a lot of contact. The referees were consistent in terms of what they were allowing to go, but I felt that Bristol capitalised on the break. This bridge got bigger, and we were thinking, well, okay, tough day at the office. But I think we called timeouts at the right time. The players responded, and in terms of what happened next, Can I give you a blow-by-blow account? Probably not. I remember the third timeout. I remember asking them to leave it out on the floor. Classic cliches, not to leave the gym knowing that they could have given them a 1% or whatever. And we talked a little bit about several defensive coverages and opening the floor up a little bit more. And I think really the run came from a solid stand, 5-man defence, and Henry just rode the crest of that wave and really got going. And it's probably one of the best individual performances that I've seen from one of our players. And probably in terms of games, the last 4 or 5 years we've been at the Division 1 level, But in reality, I think it was a 5-man performance, and we locked things down. We gained possessions when we needed to, and people, I think, began to show the confidence that I was trying to instill in them prior to the game, knowing that we can be competitive with a team like that, and that although we're quite young, we can deliver in the clutch. And I guess the rest is history.
Where's the program at the moment? Because, and I've said this before on this radio station, I always marvel at the college system in America and over here to a lesser extent, whereby you have guys for 4 years and then they've got to go. They're gone. In the professional game, you find a Kobe Bryant and you look after him. He's yours for life. You could build around them time and time and time again. How do you manage to keep going when you know that at the end of this year, 3 or 4 of your players are gone?
I think it's a good question. For me personally, there's a great deal of pride in what we've done this past few years. We obviously graduated quite a big class 3 years ago now, and recruited, and we had a tough season last year. But last year's toughness, I guess, the experiences they had made those freshmen stronger. That they didn't have the support in the support of the seniors that they'd had the previous year, and they grew up. And then this year, they were one of the best teams in the country, and I think that epitomises what you try to do with college teams. You build them up, and then you have to build again, and you build them up, and you have to build again, and the consistency comes from, I believe, the program that we set, the players that we recruit, and we're normally after the same type of player, someone with raw potential. They're normally the cream of the crop that have remained domestic or as close to as we can get. There's plenty of guys that go to Europe, there's plenty of guys that go to US, and I genuinely believe in the guys that we've recruited over the past few years, whether they've been postgraduate or undergraduate, they've been some of the best players available domestically. Maybe guys that have missed an opportunity, maybe that guys have made different choices because of academics, maybe guys that have just taken a bump in the road and then just got back up again and known that basketball was the right direction to take. And hopefully, that's reflected in what we deliver as a programme. We've given them either their first chance or a second chance developing their game over 2 or 3 years. I guess that's what it's about. I'm not going to lie, in Northumbria I shed a few tears because there's guys that have been with us for 3 years. They came in pretty fresh-faced, maybe a little wet behind the ears, and they've grown up, and they've been probably, I'd hope my peers would say this, one of the better teams to contend with this year. Some of them still got some growing up to do, and I think that's reflected in the way we finish the season. But if they take those lessons and learn from them, which they have done with most of the bumps that we've faced, I can see some guys going on to professional careers. It might be for 2 or 3 years in a small country, just over the water, or it may be for a bit longer if they get their heads down and they knuckle down a little bit. But I think the way I see our programme, and I know a number of college coaches will state, is maybe the time where they grow up in the sport, and if you can facilitate that or help them come to the answers that they need to move on, then your job's done.
And we'll hear more from Matt Newby in a few minutes' time. But first, we'll bring you the final part of our tribute to Damon Huffman of the Newcastle Eagles. Mike Shaft spoke to Eagles head coach Fab Flournoy and asked him what attracted him to Huffman as a player.
You may know if he's a coach's son. He comes from a great basketball pedigree. He's also very smart, very intelligent, Ivy Leaguer, and he plays the game the way it's supposed to be played, both on the court and mentally, setting the pace and setting the tempo, making reads, keeping everybody involved, great pace to the game, and he's a gem of a player. And players like him don't come around too often. And I say that, in seeing lots of players and talented players and really good players. And he's different. And I'm not talking necessarily about the talent level. It's just understanding and getting the game. And he has it as if he's been playing basketball for 15, 20 years, and he has it, and that's why he's so special, because he has that understanding. I mean, he can be a coach, and also in the point guard, you want that. He's just phenomenal. It just, his pace, locker room guy, being able to talk to guys, being able to make reads and, getting guys to understand themselves and putting everybody in a good situation where, they're going to look good. Unfortunate for us, he got hurt at a pivotal point in time because there was a natural transition from a team to go through, and we were just asserting ourselves this year, and he was asserting himself within this team, and we just started to see it, and then all of a sudden he went down, and it happened at a pivotal point in time. Happened in January and February, and January and February is the point in time within the BBL that teams solidify themselves. Whether they have injuries or not, they solidify their identity, because it's the first 3 months you're trying to find your identity, and then that January, February, you solidify your identity. And it was almost a case where he was identifying himself as the general of the team. You always need a team leader or a team scorer or someone like that, but you also need a general, a leader, and someone that's going to have poise and confidence. And we lost that, and we're getting the tail end of that, and that's what's happening within games. His rhythm is a little bit off, but at the same time, his understanding for the game, he's a coach's dream.
And now, back to Division 1 with Leeds Carnegie Director of Basketball Matt Newby, who spoke to Mike Shaft. Rumours were rife that Leeds Carnegie had made a bid to join the BBL for the start of the 2013-14 season, and Mike asked Matt to clarify the situation.
Well, I can give you the on-the-record answer because we did put in a bid. We hoped to be in the BBL in 2013. Unfortunately, we haven't been selected as one of the franchises to go forth in this annum, and I think there's a number of reasons for that. We pitched to the franchise committee quite late, probably in comparison to some of our peers, and in terms of where we stand as a franchise, I think they want us to establish certain aspects of the core business and come back to the table with them. So we hope to be back in contention for a franchise place for 2014, and I'm pretty confident that with a year to establish those needs for the franchise league, we'll be there.
How is the league overall doing this year? And I want you to explain something to me about Bucks, which I don't really understand. I will hold my hands up to that, because you had a good run in Bucks again.
Yeah. In terms of the National League I thought was the strongest it's been for a while in terms of depth. For people that were watching from the outside or new to the game, they could turn up at our arena every week and there'd be a competitive game. There was very few blowouts, and I think that's reflected a transition in, I guess, a development ethos in certain teams, so they're holding on to young talented players, and maybe the right teams have graduated or come through the EB system, and we're beginning to see a little bit more strength in that depth. I really believe that you had a game 1 through 11 or 1 through 12 this year. Reading did put on a heck of a run at the beginning of the year, but in terms of the quality of basketball played, better. In terms of the personnel involved, better. In terms of the coaching, better. And I think that's it can only be good for British basketball. And I think is it going to compete with the BBL? Hopefully not, because I think you need a league that stands alone. Is it going to be an attractive proposition for people to come to? Yes, I think it is. In terms of books, the British Universities and Colleges League is a standalone entity in terms of it works purely for the student bodies within institutions to compete in sport. In terms of basketball, it's one of the stronger sports that sits within their competition structure. And in terms of the Premiership North, you'll see BBL teams going head-to-head with Division 1 teams. So in our league this year, we had Worcester, Durham, ourselves, Northumbria, and a very strong Loughborough side that had a lot of the young personnel that featured in their incredible season this year. Even in the regular season, which, let's be right about, is another 10 games for our players, there were some really, really great games, really good advertisement for basketball. That season culminates in a Final Eights, and that was hosted at Leeds Metropolitan University this year in the new arena, which I thought was a fantastic competition. We had a strong first day, and second day we beat LSBU in the first round, the quarterfinals, and we matched up with Loughborough in the semis, which was a tough game, and I thought they were incredible. Took the win late in the fourth, and then matched up with a very, very strong Worcester side on the Wednesday. And I thought we gave a great representation of ourselves. You know, in terms of who we started 5 domestic guys that had either been with us for 3 years or 2 years respectively. And we matched up with an incredible lineup for us. I think they do a great job. They've got postgraduates that come in from all over the world, notably Kozlowskis, who has obviously had a great tenure in the EuroLeague, Ossetti, Fernandez, Prezi Blue. It was a nice team to match up with. Then they had the young Khalil Irving, who I thought was phenomenal, and he's had an incredible year and one of the best emerging domestic talents. Matched up well with them. I think it was a game where we proved that we could stand with them. It was a low-scoring affair, and I think we were in it till the end. You know, it was a 5-point game at the close. A couple of swings in the balance, a couple of no calls, and they extend the lead and close the game. But there's a great sense of pride and achievement. You know, the guys that have walked in as freshmen have probably walked out as seniors a little bit more prepared for potential professional careers or the busy world that is life, you know.
How has it been for you personally, and where are you mentally with the whole thing at the moment?
I mean, honestly, I couldn't ask for a better opportunity. 7 years ago, I was asked to take up the position at Leeds Met on the back of a good grounding in junior basketball, a good grounding in community development. But there were some uncertainties, and I got a lot of backing from some good people, like Laszlo Nemeth and my line manager Ian Smythe. And 7 years on, we've appeared in every national final there is. We've done well in collecting a few of them, and that gives me a great deal of pride and a great deal of heart of what can be achieved. And I mean, people see, I guess, the developments in the senior ranks, but I think we've also got to look at what's happened on the ground, and we've built a pretty good community base and a growing junior programme. I guess if I walked out the door today, I don't think there'd be too many regrets, but I don't think the job's done yet. And I'm quite excited about next year. And I want to present a very strong case to the BBL and those that might not think we're ready, and put a competitive team out on the floor again and see what lies next. And I know there's a lot of people already looking to next year. I spoke to both Mark Stewartall and Samit Nurzade over the weekend, congratulated them on their amazing seasons, and they were already looking at the chalkboard and the recruitment list. And I think that's what makes this league quite strong. There's a lot of committed people wanting to do big things for young people, and if that stays the same, I think we're making progress.
Well, Matt, let me congratulate you on a great season. I have to say, at the start of the season, I predicted it's on the website that you guys were good enough to win something, and in the end, you did it. You won the National Cup, which was a fabulous day, a fabulous performance, and one of the best endings I can remember in a long time. Congratulations on the arena, which I think is beautiful, and everybody's talking about it. And here's to next season, and let's see you guys in the BBL.
Thank you very much, and big thanks to your listeners, and a big thanks to everyone that's involved in Leeds Carnegie basketball, and thank you to the support of all the guys at Leeds Metropolitan University.
Director of Basketball and head coach of Leeds Carnegie, Matt Newby, whose team finished the season as winners of the National Cup. Congratulations should also go out to Reading, who won 2 trophies, and to Essex Leopards, who won the final trophy in England Basketball Division 1. Congratulations must also go out to City of Sheffield Hatters, who completed a clean sweep of all the trophies in England Basketball Division 1 Women. Not only did they complete the clean sweep, but they did it by going unbeaten for the full season, a tremendous achievement. We did attempt to speak to head coach Vanessa Ellis for this programme, but unfortunately she was unavailable due to her commitments with the Great Britain women's team. And so to our final interview, and for that we return to Manchester basketball legend Jeff Jones. Jones is the man responsible for the rebirth of the Manchester Giants. Mike Shaft asked him to outline his view of the future of basketball in the Manchester area.
We want to work with everybody in the greater Manchester area as far as basketball clubs. We feel that we can provide an awful lot of things that will help them become maybe a little bit more stable, maybe a little bit better. There are five basketball centers counting the Amici, but there's 5 basketball centers in and around the area that are what they used to be called ball halls. They've just been bought. We have a partnership with the new owners and operators to develop the basketball element. So whether that's camps, after school, maybe school competitions, performance clinics, camps, skill stuff. So from our point of view, having a link with 10 basketball courts in the area helps us. It gives us access to 5,500 people a week that are playing sport, whether it's netball or basketball, but they're playing sport. So I think that's a major step forward for us as far as helping us grow our fan base. That in turn then presents its own problems in itself. Wright Robinson will go to about 1,300 next year as far as a capacity. That's not going to be big enough. And we're moving to a Sunday. This all happened on a Friday night where all these people were coming, and it's not the easiest place to get to. So
Tell me about it.
We knew the people that were coming were diehard fans. So we're moving to Sunday afternoons. It immediately frees up somewhere in the region of 1,100 kids that play basketball on a Friday night that didn't always or have the opportunity to come. So all of a sudden, you mark that with the 1,000, 1,100 we're getting, and the possibility of them and a buddy or them and their parents coming, we're looking at 2,500 people as a hardcore. And I think that's achievable. And I think from our perspective, the next thing would be to make sure that we have a facility that can accommodate that at whatever terms. And obviously the facilities that are being muted are going to come online. And I think from our point of view, we have to be an integral part of that.
I presume you're talking there about the new basketball performance centre that's being talked about to be built in Gorton.
I mean, obviously, I've got an England basketball hat on as well because I'm a director of England basketball. And to call it a national basketball center is a little bit of a misnomer. It's really going to be a national performance center. And when you think of Manchester, you actually think of performance. So in the sense of sporting excellence. So from that point of view, the England Basketball Association has so many contracted hours that they'll use it for. It will become a performance center for other things, as well as giving us an opportunity to have a mid-size arena that hopefully we can enter into some negotiations with the city council and be a part of what goes on there, from certainly from a performance element and a playing venue.
Last time out, you had, and we've spoken about it, the British-only policy for your players. Almost a Manchester-only policy, but that slipped ever so slightly. Are you going to modify that situation for the coming season?
I think I owe it to the guys that played and stuck it out to put the best team on the floor possible. The problem being when you start looking at the next level of British talent, and that's not to decry the guys that are playing in this league, but the next level of British talent, you are talking about serious money to get a Pops or to get even an Andy Thompson, who's a Manchester kid that's playing in a second division French setup. Andy would come tomorrow if we had enough money. The one thing we can't do is go away from what we need as far as principles and building a squad and sustainability. So what we have to make sure we do, whoever we bring in, understands our ethos, understands what we're about. If we can do that with British kids, and there are kids available, we will. But I think for us to justify the next jump, whether that happens to hopefully go into a bigger arena or our own place to play, we need to be successful on the floor. And if we can't do that with British talent, we'll be extremely careful, but we will look at almost position specific. I may be a point guard this year that was a little bit more experienced, that was used to doing things, would have got us over the hump. Another big guy to go alongside Aliou and Mike Bernard, who are both good, solid British kids. I would love to be able to do it all British because I think there's enough talent. But unless somebody wants to come and give me an open check and bring in the caliber of players we need, we'll do it our way and make sure we're sustainable. There's some nice good American players out there that are also would understand what we're talking about. So I think we'll assemble what we want as far as British-wise, hopefully by the end of May, and then we'll look at the needs.
You recently made a prediction that the Giants will be playing European competition within the next 5 years. Why do you think it was important to make such a prediction?
You know what? If we don't and it's 6, I'm happy. But if you don't set yourself targets and aspirational goals, then you'll settle for where you are and you'll settle for and I don't want to say mediocrity, but you'll settle for the status quo in essence of, and I know the reasons why Newcastle haven't done it and other teams haven't done it. And I also know why teams did do it back in the 80s and 90s. And now the rewards are even better if you can get to that level. Now, what we have to do is across the board, those 8,000 kids, we have to start churning out some players. We have to start getting guys that understand where we're trying to go. And if you say, okay, well, it's like, oh, we can play BBL and you'll get X and you'll be okay. But all of a sudden, in 3 years' time, if I'm recruiting a good, solid British kid, and I say, all right, well, you come to Manchester, go to university, or come to Manchester, and this is where we are. We're playing in a 3,500 seat facility. We're doing this. We do this at preseason. We do this. We do that. Our aspirations are we want to go into Europe. And there are levels of European competition that British teams properly funded could compete in. And the people that say they can't actually don't understand where we are and where European basketball is now.
What about the future for Jeff Jones? All of this over the years, not just now, but this is taking a tremendous amount of energy from you. Have you got the energy to keep going, and how much longer for?
The energy is easy because you're doing something you love. I would like to think that a lot of the people around the table with us called on my experiences and the stuff that I've seen, and we helped in that sense. But the sooner more people get up to speed, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but understand all the little idiosyncrasies that go along with British basketball and all the things that need to be right to get the public to embrace you, which I think, again, we made great strides to this season. I mean, I could coach till I probably would die on the court if I had my choice. But that eventually it's going to be, I will be realistic. It'll be if I've taken these guys as far as I can. Now, this past year, I would have said I had a C-, but I also know why, in the sense of the other things that were going on and all that stuff. We're trying to make sure the ball hall deal fell into place, doing full-time stuff. If I get him into Europe, I don't necessarily have to coach in Europe. So in my aspiration, I want to get a program and a club that is solid, that is stable, that actually has its own talent coming through, but also is vying for elite level basketball. If I get to that, I'd be more than happy to come in and sit and watch and
not shout at the ref. Oh, sorry.
I'll always shout. I'll always shout at the ref. I'd shout at the ref now if I could.
I got one question for you, and you're in a quite amazing position because you're a director of England basketball. As the leader of the Giants, you go to the BBL meetings, and then you have your own team as well. When are you guys going to do something about this ridiculous situation where we're playing these two-legged games and having this aggregate nonsense?
No,
I'm sorry to call it that, but I see no other word to call it.
No, I absolutely agree. I think there's, and don't get me wrong, I think the BBL recognize certain things that need to be changed or improved, and I think facilities, and if you listen to people talk, it is facilities, control of your own facilities, secondary spend in your facilities, all those things, home and away, which again is it's just tradition to have the 3 games. I'm not a big fan of that. So a home and away situation every other week, the football mentality of my team's at home this week, and it is getting to that. Me personally, the last time I coached in the BBL, like probably 96, 97, I came in halfway through, and Derby, I came in for there, and they were in 8th. They'd won 3 games. I didn't do anything. I just came in, and actually, believe it or not, some people find it hard to believe, I smiled at the players, and it was phenomenal. And they ended up making 8th. And we made 8th on almost exactly the same type of play we lost 8th on this year. Ted Berry threw the lane, threw it up, banked in. Everybody went nuts, full house, all that sort of stuff. Best of 3 playoffs with Birmingham, who'd won the league. Birmingham come to our place first game. Absolutely destroy us. 35 points. Owner Mike Horton, no nonsense guy, used to do football. Looked at me like, what the heck did I bring you back for? Blah blah blah. We then go to Birmingham and we win in overtime at their place. So we get a 3rd game. I think we end up losing by 7, 9, 10, whatever in the 3rd. But it didn't matter. We'd extended our season. We'd had 3,
but the
we gave it a shot.
The beauty of that is that, because you got whooped in the first game, the second game starts at 0-0.
Absolutely.
We have this situation this season with Newcastle winning by 30 or whatever in the first game. What's the point of the second game? Nobody's going to make up 30.
No, absolutely. And I think the other thing I'd like to see, the Big East do it in the States in college level. The top 4 teams don't even play the first round. So in other words, you then extend it. You go to your 12, so 4 through 12. So all of a sudden, your 12th place team
has got something to fight for.
And the fans are, and it is that. And I think, again, facilities, you get to that level, and the season still will be as long, and you'll still be as lucrative. It's a false economy. So I think there are signs and movement in a lot of areas, and I think the BBL as an entity are realizing some of their weaknesses and shortcomings. England basketball, I think there's what's called a joint liaison committee, and it's going to be interesting because I think I'm going to be the one in the middle. I've seen both sides, I've heard both sides, and it will be, I think, a frank and open discussion of where we could be and where we should be as a sport. Everybody's doom and gloom. I'm not that way. I think it's an absolutely fantastic, great sport. I just think that we've got a great opportunity. And in Manchester, I think we even got the best opportunity in the country.
And that was Jeff Jones of the Manchester Giants rounding off this first Basketball Beats programme. But before we leave you, we have one last item. All of the interviews for this programme were carried out by Mike Shaft, and during 3 of these interviews, the interviewees took the opportunity to pay tribute to Mike Shaft himself. We're delighted to bring you those tributes here. First, you'll hear the voice of Jeff Jones. He'll be followed by Rob Paternostro and finally Fab Flournoy.
Just one thing that everybody needs to know, and it is in the sense of the same passion that I've got, I know is in you, and it is greatly appreciated, the support you've given the sport. Not just the Giants. I've seen you all over the place doing what you do best. You asked me before what does it. It's that. It's people like yourself, maybe other people that give up that kind of time and have that kind of love and passion for the game. So from that point of view, I'd like to thank you for about the 30 years you had in it.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Mike, because being around this league for as long as I've had, and I've known you from when I first came in, you were doing the Bullets games when I was first playing. The reason why we're able to keep this going is because of people like you, people that have given up their time because you love the sport. That's what we talk about all the time, is that those people and the volunteers up and down the country, and I think that's what makes this league so special. And when you're around it as long as I am, as long as Fab is, as long as these guys that have been around, we all appreciate that. It is nice to go to Sheffield and to see you, to go up and down different places and talk to these people that we know have given their blood, sweat, and tears to this league. And I think those people are really excited about where this league is going, and we hope to continue to put a great product on the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And last little bit, Mike, just want to say thank you. Number 1, for interviewing me. Number 2, for covering basketball for so many years. A lot of people might not realize or understand that your knowledge, experience, basketball, seeing it, commentating it, watching it, being a fan of it, being an advocate of it for British basketball. And you've seen players, you've seen them come, you've seen them go, you've seen them grow. Your archive of sport, in particular basketball, and you know, and it's great just to be sitting here interviewing and being able to talk, because what people don't know is the fact of obviously I've been in the league for a long time. You've known me since I came into this league as a rookie from first week. And then before me, you was covering basketball 10, 15 years. And I've been in the league a long time now. So it's great. It's great because I feel myself and other players are ambassadors of the sport. And you are that and much more. So thank you, and you know, I hope the listeners listen, and I hope the readers read, and they stay appreciative of Mike Shaft and what he's done for the game. Thank you.
Fab, thank you very much indeed.
Basketball Beats was written, produced and directed by Mike Shaft on an idea by Giulio Minozzi and presented by me, Phil Sayer, for the new Sunset Radio.